Hi there, my name is Nicole, and today I am going to share with you a great informal assessment strategy known as Kahoot. My first experience with Kahoot was when I was taking the dental assisting program, and I immediately fell for it. My competitive nature came out to play, and I was determined to do well and come out on top. During my studies, I ended up making my own Kahoots to study from on my own and with my fellow peers, and it helped us all immensely. Now, as a facilitator, I still utilize Kahoots and often get feedback from students on how much they love them and would like to see more. Kahoot is an online game-based learning platform that is very easy to use for both facilitators and learners. It has many different question types, including multiple choice, true and false, short answer, puzzle, poll questions, and many more. One of the great things about Kahoot is that students receive feedback immediately. Another great thing about Kahoot is that it's free. However, by paying a small annual fee, you do get to access more question types and are able to allow more players to play at the same time. Games can introduce goals, interaction, feedback, problem solving, competition, narrative, and fun learning environments and elements that can increase learner engagement and sustain motivation. Kahoot encompasses many of these principles. Competition can motivate students and can be leveraged by leaderboards that showcase the distribution of point totals that students have accumulated throughout various learning activities. Understandably, utilizing leaderboards can be a disincentive for students at the bottom, which is why Kahoot only displays the top 5 students. This ensures that students at the bottom are not discouraged by others seeing where they are at. This works great for a larger class, maybe not so great with a smaller class size. Kahoots are fun. They differ from the normal lecture classes, and it gets students involved and interactive. I chose to do a Kahoot with a specific course because the students were introduced to a lot of new terminology in a couple of different categories. So I wanted to assess their recall on all these terms. Kahoot is great for assessing the lower levels of cognition on Bloom's taxonomy, recall. By using this technique, teachers can quickly see not only whether if their students have memorized the basic information, but how well they have organized that information into their memories. Kahoot is easy to use both in the classroom and during an online class. I use it in both scenarios. Our students watch or listen to our PowerPoints on their own during a synchronous online class. For the last half an hour, I have them all come back for some review, which is when I normally share my screen and present the Kahoot. It's a great wrap-up to see what they have retained, and it engages them to want to remember more when they know that there's a Kahoot at the end. After the question is answered, the right answer is displayed immediately. I also take this time to explain the wrong answers to the students, why they are wrong, or what the correct definition of that term is, which furthers their knowledge. I leave my Kahoots open and share the link with all students for them to utilize as a study tool, which most students utilize and will sometimes even create their own. My favorite part of Kahoot is receiving a report at the end of each completed round. It shows an average percentage of how the players did, how many players played, the time it took to play, and most importantly, any questions that students had difficulty with. There are a few disadvantages to using Kahoot. First off, a strong Wi-Fi network is needed. This can be difficult when playing with students online. The questions only appear on the facilitator's screen. Students must be able to clearly see this screen in order to have a fair chance. If students are playing on their own via a shared link, they must utilize 2 sources of technology to display both the questions and the answers. Kahoot is not a great source to use to assess higher levels of cognition, and competition may work for some students, but it might end up stressing other students out. On the syllabus for my class, it tells the students that they will be having a Kahoot review at the end of their scheduled time. As this was an online class, I ensured to tell my students to have their cell phones or another source of technology that they can connect to the internet with in order to be a part of this review. Then I shared my screen so all could see the questions. As a courtesy, I read the questions out loud for them and leave them to read the answers. The great thing about this informal assessment technique is that I can provide the students with feedback immediately. As soon as the question has been answered, it shows you how many people got the answer right and how many got it wrong. Before moving on to the next question, I go over why that answer is correct and why the other options are incorrect. By reviewing the incorrect answers, it allows for extra review on those terms without having to add them to the assessment. The program itself also lets the students know right away if they have answered the question correctly or incorrectly. At the end of the Kahoot, a report is generated that tells you exactly who answered what correctly and incorrectly. This is anonymous to the players, but helpful for the facilitator to gauge where students are at and assess whether some students may need some one-on-one time for help. It also helps to see what questions students may be struggling with. This information is great to provide a review to the students in their next class. I have often used these results to formulate a review for my students, whether it be in person in the next class or in an email prior to their final exam. This was a new Kahoot that I created for this class, and I was curious to see how the results would differ for my next unit's Kahoot, being that it was a bit of a review from Unit 2's Kahoot. I was so happy to see improvement in scores from the class last year. You can see here that the percentage of questions the students got correct jumped from 62% to 75%, and no questions were deemed difficult. That's a pretty big win in my books, and I would not change or stop utilizing Kahoots. If anything, I may end up using them more. Thank you so much for watching my short video on Kahoot, a great informal classroom assessment technique.